To my Guyanese and Indo-Caribbean community, anybody who is a practicing Hindu will be celebrating Diwali or the Festival of Lights very, very soon. I wanted to go ahead and share a video and take you along the ride of showing how I make all of these different sweets for this Diwali season. If you want to check out how I put it together, please keep on watching. I just wanted to let you all know this is not a full in-depth recipe video. If you do want every recipe that I have showed in this video, I have all of those on my channel, so just go ahead and search them up. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off by making my pera. And now through this video, I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips, a couple of tricks in case you had to make all of these different sweets if you were having a puja or a function at your home. So I'm starting off with the pera because that's the one that takes the longest in my opinion, and it actually takes the longest amount of time for you to sit there and stir it. So I'm making 2 cans of milk. Basically what that means is I put 2 cans of carnation milk or evaporated milk in my pot, and I fill those cans with sugar, equal parts milk and sugar for this recipe. Once I add that into the pot, I'm going to stir it up, and I'm going to keep on boiling it on a moderate heat, about a medium heat, until it comes up to a boil, and keep on stirring it until it's nice and thick. This is what the pera mixture looks like after about 10 minutes of boiling. As you all can see, it started to get nice and thick. And I will mention that a lot of people will add in some spices. They might add in a little bit of vanilla essence, anything to spice up their pera a little bit, but I really like the traditional recipe with just the milk and the sugar. So my mixture boiled for about 14 minutes. That's usually the amount of time I let it boil on the stove, and it works for me. It might be a little more or less for you, but when I take it off of the heat, all I do is I keep on mixing it and I keep on stirring it. Some people also put this in their cake mixer or their stand mixer, and that allows you to beat it and get rid of some of that glossiness as well, so this way you can get to that tacky texture you need for your pera. So after I beat that pera mixture for almost 10 minutes, you're going to be left with this beautiful tacky mixture, and it's no longer glossy. If it's glossy, that means it's not going to set up properly and it's going to be chewy. You have to get it to this stage here where it's a little more thick and hard to stir, so this way it will harden up by itself. It forms all of the sugar crystals when you beat it up this way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take a spoon and I'm going to drop little bits onto my parchment paper here, and once I get a little batch on my board here, I'm going to go ahead and take my hands, wet them with some water. You could even use some butter or ghee, and you're going to go ahead and roll it into small balls and then press on them just like how I'm doing here. And this is the pera that you're left with. As you all can see, I'm pressing on it, and even though this was not even sitting for that long, it's already set up. So once I let it sit a little bit longer, it's going to get even harder and get to that nice crystallized melt in your mouth texture that I like. So now that the pera is done, I'm going to move on to making my next sweet. I'm going to go ahead and make my panjari, and for anybody who doesn't know what panjari is, it is a sweet that we usually make for Lord Krishna, Lord Surya, Lord Vishnu, any of those male gods we usually make this dish for. And this sweet right here is usually served over parsad, and it's a nice crumbly sweet mixture, and it adds a nice little crunch when you're eating your parsad. I will be honest, some people love it and some people hate it for whatever reason, but I love it. It's one of my favorites to eat on top of parsad. So I'm going to go the shortcut route today. I am not soaking and grinding my own rice today. I'm just going to be using some crushed rice that I got from the Indian store. Now, some people would use rice flour, but I don't like that because it's a little too fine in texture. I like to use the coarse grain rice flour or the cracked rice. So all I do is I put that rice flour into my pot. You want to put it in a dry pot, and you're going to parch it until it's a nice golden color. Some people leave it very white, some people make it even darker than this, but this color right here is perfect for me. And I didn't get this on camera, but once I added it into the bowl, I went ahead and sprinkled in some roasted ground anise seeds, and that is coming from the star anise pod. And once I mixed that into the rice flour, I let it cool a little bit, and once it cooled down, I went ahead and I added in my white sugar. But this is the way you make panjari, very quick, simple, and easy, and I'm going to put that to the side. And at this point, I'm going to be making my parsad. Now, parsad, also known as mambhog, This is the one that is made with ghee, and the reason why we make it with ghee is because it's for puja. You cannot use the one made with butter for puja because that usually has salt in it, and for all of my Guyanese folks out there, you know we usually make that one with some orange soda or cream soda inside. So I'm going the traditional route today, just using ghee, flour, and my milk and my spices, and that's the way we're gonna go to. All I'm doing here is I'm putting my ghee into my karahi and I'm gonna let that melt on a medium to medium high heat. So while my ghee is melting, this is the perfect time to work on my pag or my milk mixture. And this right here, I've gotten the absolute best measurements and the best results with this measurement that I'm making here. I will do a separate video at some point in time with these exact measurements because I really enjoyed the texture that this parsad gave and the way that it tasted in the end. So in my bowl, I'm adding in some very finely chopped cherries. I'm also going to go in with my brown demerara sugar, and on top of that, I'm going to be going in with some boiling hot water. Now, in my opinion, I know a lot of people don't like to use any water in their parsad because they feel that it doesn't make the parsad rich at all. And sometimes I used to think like that, but I tried it with just a little bit of water and then mostly milk, and the results are absolutely amazing. It makes the parsad very fluffy, it gives it a great texture, and it does not take away from the taste or the richness at all. So into those cherries and the raisins, I added in the water, I'm mixing it up, and that's just so we can go ahead and break up that brown sugar and melt it. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in my milk. Now, like I said, I'll have to do a separate video on how I measured the water and everything like that, but I also have all of my other parsad recipes on my channel for you to check out. So at this point, once you get the milk in, you're going to mix everything together very well until it's all combined. Now, for this recipe, I did not heat up my milk at all, but if you wanted to, of course, you could heat all of this up in a separate pot and let it get nice and warm so you can add it into your parsad later. I'm also going to add in my raisins, and this right here is going to allow the raisins to soak a little bit and allow them to plump up. So I already added in my flour into the ghee, and I've been parching it or roasting it in that ghee on a medium to medium high heat. I added in a little piece of a cinnamon stick, and you have to keep on turning this and parching this very well until it gets a nice brown color. Usually for me, 15 to 20 minutes is the perfect mark to get that flour parched properly and to not have a raw tasting parsad. So as you can see, it's been a couple more minutes now, it's gotten even darker. I'm adding in my elaichi or my cardamom. This is optional, but I do like the taste in it. And once it gets to this stage, you have to make sure your heat is on a high heat. Whenever you're making parsad, you cannot throw in the milk on a low heat because when you do that, it gets very tacky and it never absorbs it properly. And then you run into the issue of the parsad getting very oily in the end because the longer you cook it, the more that ghee or the butter that you're using releases from it and it gets very oily, and it also gets a very not so smooth texture. So once I get to that stage and it's parched, I added in all of my milk. And I'm going to go ahead and keep on stirring it, and you're going to see how quick this thickens up and it comes together. As you can see, the more you stir it, and by you having it on the high heat, that flour and the ghee is going to absorb that milk mixture very, very well. But as you all can see, the more I stir it around, that flour and that ghee mixture sucked up all of this milk, and it made for such a rich, creamy, and beautiful tasting parsad. I am not a person that likes a crumbly parsad. When it is super crumbly, I find that it's very dry. When you make it this way, by the time you serve your parsad, which is usually many hours after you make it or even the day after, it has the perfect texture and it's not too dry nor is it too wet. But this right here is my finished parsad. I'm going to stir it just for about a minute more and then it is ready. I'm going to go ahead and put it in a bowl. I'm going to cover it well and I'm going to set that aside and work on the next sweet. So the next sweet I'm working on is rot. Now rot is actually my favorite sweet out of this entire lineup of sweets, and I'm going to make mine a little bit different today. Now usually my family and I would just mix our milk, our flour, our sugar, and a couple of raisins in a bowl together, but today I'm going to add in cherries and raisins and I'm going to blend them up a little bit. Sometimes when I'm eating rot, I'm not a fan of the big pieces of raisins, and sometimes the raisins tend to fall out when you fry it. So I figured by going ahead and blending it a little bit, you still get some small chunks, but it's more evenly distributed. I went ahead and I added in some milk. I'm going to put the top of my blender and I'm just going to buzz this up a little bit just to break up those dried fruits. And to mix the rot, in my bowl, I have some all-purpose flour, and I'm also going to go in with my ghee. Now your ghee could be melted or it could be room temperature, it will not make a difference. it'll still make the rote come out just fine. And on top of my ghee, I'm also going to go in with my white sugar. I will mention if you wanted to use brown sugar for this recipe, I recommend mixing it into that milk mixture that we just made because the brown sugar is more coarse. And this right here, what I'm about to do, is a crucial part whenever you're making rote. You have to mix in that ghee and that sugar very well into the flour mixture. The reason why you have to do this is because the more evenly distributed that ghee is with the flour, the more flaky that rote is going to end up coming out. And once I go ahead and get this done, I'm going to go ahead and take the milk mixture and mix it into my flour mixture until it's a nice soft dough. So like I told you guys, I added in that milk and cherry and raisin mixture into that flour and ghee that we mixed together, and I went ahead and I mixed it into a soft dough. Now when you're making rote, you just need to mix it together until it comes together. Do not knead the mixture. If you knead the mixture and work with it too much, you end up getting a very hard product in the end, and by the time you go to serve the rote, it will be very tough and almost rubbery when you're eating it. So just bring it together as soft as you can, and then break it up into balls and be very light and gentle with it. As you can see, I'm not going to keep on folding it over onto itself and being very crazy with it. I'm just going to smooth it over as best as I can. And to me, one of the best things about eating rote is all of those crispy edges, so you don't have to make it perfect at all. I also recommend that as you're making your rote, you do not roll it out with the rolling pin. The reason being is because if you were to roll it out with the rolling pin, it tends to puff up like you're making a puri or a bake, and that's not what you want. This is the way that I like to do it. I like to go ahead and take a little bit of dried flour and get it sprinkled all over my fingers, and then I pat down that rote until I get the thickness that I desire. Don't make them too thick because they take a long time to fry, but also don't make them too thin or else they're going to come out like crackers when you're done frying it. This right here, maybe about ½ an inch thickness, is perfect for me. And I've got some ghee heating up on the stove. This here is on a medium to medium low heat because these are going to need about 7 minutes to fry each. Now, the reason being is because this does not have baking powder, it doesn't have leavening in it, so you have to make sure to cook it through or else you're going to get a raw tasting rote in the end. And if you do that and leave it raw on the inside, when it cools down, it becomes very hard and rubbery as well. That's the reason why I like to use a larger, wider pan, because I get to fit more inside. They do take a long time to fry. So what I just did here is I took my spoon and I went ahead and I scored it. I put 3 nice little indents on my rote. You don't want to go all the way through, you just want to poke it slightly. What this is going to do is it's going to stop the rote from puffing up. Like I said, some people when they make rote, the rote tends to puff up when you don't indent it or score it, and then it comes out feeling like a bake and a little too fluffy on the inside. That's not what you want. So every couple of minutes I go ahead and I flip the rotes around and I keep it moderated on that medium to medium low heat, and I let them take their time. When you rush rote, you tend to burn it and it never cooks on the inside, and if you overcook it, they will get hard, so make sure to moderate that. Now the next thing I'm going to work on is my puri. This is another one of these sweets that's a little more on the time consuming side, especially if you don't have help. So I'm going to mix this up quickly and I'm going to start to roll them and fry them so I can get another thing out of the way. Into my bowl here, I'm going to go ahead and add in my flour. I went ahead and I added in a little bit of white sugar, and at this point I'm also going to go in with a little bit of ghee, just a little tiny touch, because remember we're going to be frying this in ghee when we roll it out as well. And once I get the ghee in, I'm going to mix it together very well until it's crumbly in that flour, and then I'm going to go in with some milk a little bit at a time until I get a beautiful soft dough. Some people mix their puri with water, some people mix it with milk, and I was always taught to mix it with milk, but you can do whatever you want as well. And I recommend as you are mixing this puri, you do not make it too soft because it's going to be very hard to roll and get it nice and round. And don't make it too hard, because if you make it too hard, it's also going to be hard to roll out and it's going to keep on coming back onto itself. It's not going to stretch out nicely how we want it to. So this is what it looks like after I've mixed up my puri with my milk. As you all can see, the dough is not too sticky and it's not too hard to where it's hard to work with. I'm just sprinkling on a little touch of flour and I'm going to keep on kneading this until I get it nice and smooth. This is the key to making a really good puri and to have a puri that's going to have a nice texture in the end. You have to knead it. So since I'm by myself in the kitchen today, I'm going to go ahead and split this up into smaller balls. I split it into 2, and I'm going to work with 1 piece at a time. The thing with puri is that being that it's so small and you're doing it on a small scale, you have to work pretty quick, because if you don't work fast enough, they tend to dry out. So I went ahead and I rolled it into a log and I cut the pieces into these little discs, and then I flattened them out with my fingers and I covered them with some flour. And at this point, I'm just going to keep on going, take my time, and go one by one and roll them nice and thin. The thing is, when you're making puri, is you should be able to see your hand on the other side when you're done rolling it. I do not like thick puri. I know some people do make it, and if that's your preference, go ahead and do it the way you wish. But in my family, we make nice thin puris to eat with our lapsi, sweet rice, whatever you want to eat it with. So I'm going to keep on rolling away here, keep my surface extra floured so this way nothing sticks, and then I'm going to go ahead and fry. So I got half of my dough all rolled out, and I went ahead and I put them into pairs because that's the way we're going to fry it. Now, I recommend if you're by yourself, go ahead and work with 1 ball at a time. Make that batch out, fry it, and then go ahead and work on the other batch. If you were to go ahead and roll all at once and then be by yourself trying to fry it, they're all going to dry out on you too quickly. So I've got my ghee heating on about a medium heat. You don't want it on a high heat or else they're going to get too crispy, and you don't want it on too much of a low heat or else they're just never going to cook. So once you get it into that pan and it bubbles up slightly, you're going to go ahead and basically turn it right away. You're going to cook it there for maybe about another 10 seconds, let it bubble up a bit. And you can flip it again if it's not getting the coverage with the ghee. But as soon as that happens, you're going to take it out of the hot ghee, drain it off properly, and you're going to put it on a piece of tissue next to you. This is the stage where it helps if you have somebody in the kitchen with you, because they can go ahead and pat it down with a paper towel and get rid of that excess ghee, and they can pack it away. But if you're by yourself, go ahead and fry a couple first, then you can go ahead and dab them and put them to the side and keep on frying. As you all can see, as I'm frying them, it's only taking about 15 to 20 seconds for each set to fry. The thing is, they are so thin, they do not need to fry for long at all. So I'm going to keep on frying the rest of my puris, and then I'm going to roll out my other set of dough, fry that out, and I'm going to go ahead and dab each one of them and pack them properly and wrap them up in a piece of foil wrap and set it aside. At this point, I'm going to start working on my laddu. For anybody that doesn't know, we usually would make laddu or offer laddu to Lord Ganesh. That's his preferred sweet, so they say. So I'm going to make a different version today. I do not have this on my channel yet, but I wanted to give this recipe a try. This was sent to me by one of my friends. So I'm going to try it and I'm going to let you guys know how it comes out, and I will share the recipe at some point on my channel. But basically all this consists of is some besan or chickpea flour as well as some rice flour, and this is the fine rice flour, not the coarse grain one. And I'm going to go ahead and parch it in my dry pan, and do not let it get super brown, but you want to cook it for about 10 minutes until it's nice and hot, so this way you cook out that raw flavor. Once the rice flour and besan cook for about 10 minutes on a medium-low heat and you feel that it is nice and light and it's cooked out, you're going to go ahead and empty it into a bowl and you're going to let it cool down a bit. Now once you get this into the bowl, you're going to go ahead and add in some milk powder. I'm going to let you all know this is probably one of the easiest laddu recipes you'd ever make, because there's no pog and there's no boiling of sugar or any of that kind of stuff. You're going to see how quick and easy it comes together. But after that milk powder, I'm going to go in with some cardamom or elaichi. I'm also adding in a little bit of ground nutmeg, and if you wanted to, you could add in a little bit of cinnamon powder. You can go in with some ground clove. If you wanted to as well, you could even add in some aniseed that you ground up as well. I'm just going to mix all of this together very well until it's all combined. And at this point, I'm going to go in with my ghee and I'm going to mix it together very well until it's nice and crumbly and it resembles wet sand. Once you get that ghee mixed in properly, the next step is to add in your sweetening. So I'm going to be going in with some confectioner sugar or powdered sugar. Like I said, there's no making of a pog today. There's nothing like that. It's very simple. We're just going to add in the powdered sugar, and you're going to see what I'm going to do next to make this come together very easily. The way this laddu is going to come together is by sprinkling in a couple tablespoons of boiling hot water at a time. What this is going to do, it's going to interact with that rice flour and make it a little bit sticky, so it's going to hold together properly. And it's also going to work with that powdered sugar, because when it dries out, it's going to get that nice harder crumbly texture as well. You do not want to add in too much of that hot water, because if you do, it's not going to make the laddu come out nice and crumbly. It's going to be very chewy. If that's something that you like, add in more water, but if you want it on the drier side, add in only a little bit of water at a time. So at this point, it cooled down enough. I'm going in with my hands. I'm going to mix it together very well. And then I'm going to grease up my hands or use a little bit of water, and I'm going to roll them into balls, and I'm going to set them aside and let them dry out. So we're getting there with our sweets. We're almost done. I'm going to go ahead and start making my sweet rice. So into my karahi, I'm going in with some water. And once that water comes up to the boil, I'm going to go ahead and add in some cinnamon sticks. And I'm going to be going in with some washed jasmine rice. That's right guys, you heard me correctly. I'm using jasmine rice today instead of the normal white rice. And the reason why I'm doing this today is because it's going to take a quicker time to cook. If you have some more time on your hands, of course you can use the white rice. But go ahead and give the jasmine rice a try one day and you're going to be very surprised at the results. So all I did was I cooked this down until the rice started to burst or overcook a little bit, and this is the stage where we can start to go in with our milk. Here's the thing, if you go in with the milk and the rice is still hard and not fully overcooked, then you're going to get a very hard kheer or sweet rice. It's not going to boil down properly. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in my whole milk, and I'm going to be using some evaporated milk, but you're going to see I'm going to add it in a little bit later. If you go in with all of your milk at one time now, like I said, the rice is not going to boil properly. Those rice grains would actually sink to the bottom of the pot, and they will start to burn at the bottom of the pot before it even starts to thicken up. So you have to layer in the milks, and you have to let it cook on a very low and slow heat. So this way you can get that creamy sweet rice without it sticking to the bottom of the pot. So my stove is actually cooking the sweet rice pretty quick. As you all can see, it started to thicken up already after I added in my whole milk, and it's only been about 6 to 7 minutes. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and layer in my evaporated milk or my carnation milk. And once you add that in, you're going to keep on stirring it up and let it thicken up even more. So it's been a couple more minutes and I'm happy with this texture because it's cooked down very, very well. At this point, we're going to sweeten that sweet rice mixture. Some people would use just sugar and some people just use condensed milk to sweeten their sweet rice. I tend to use a little bit of both. I use mostly the condensed milk and then I'll go in with a little handful or a sprinkle of some of that brown demerara sugar just to finish it off. So go ahead and stir it in and simmer this down just a little longer. And once I'm happy with my sweet rice and I think it's done, I'm going to go ahead and add in some raisins that I've soaked. And you have to soak them so this way they can plump up nicely and not burst. And I'm also going to be going in with some chopped cherries. The cherries are optional. I know some people like them and some don't. I'm also going to go ahead and add in a little bit of that cherry juice a little later on. So this way I can get a beautiful pink color on my sweet rice. And this is the final sweet rice. This is how thick I want to leave it because remember, as this cools, it's going to get even thicker and it's going to dry out. Now this is my last sweet that I'm going to be making. This is what we call lapsi. Some people also call it halwa. Now lapsi is always made for Mother Durga or any one of the Devis like Lakshmi, Saraswati, Kali, Ganga. Usually this is what's made for their puja. So I wanted to make some because in honor of Mother Lakshmi for Diwali, I thought it would be fitting. I went ahead and I added in my flour into a dry pot and I'm going to parch this down maybe for about 10 to 12 minutes or until that flour gets lighter in texture. You have to keep this on a medium to medium low heat because you don't want it to get brown at all. Lapsi is supposed to be nice and white and not supposed to be super brown. So go ahead and regulate that heat. So I just wanted to show you this is what the flour looks like when it's done parching. If you feel it, it should be very fine and very powdery. It should not be a little clumpy like it was when you first started parching it. So at this point, I'm going to empty it into a bowl, let it cool down a bit, and now I'm going to be going in with my evaporated milk. I'm using a mix of evaporated milk as well as whole milk today. You can use one or the other. Some people even add in a little bit of water, but I don't like to because it tends to not be as rich. I also wanted to mention that while I'm adding in my milks, I already added in my sugar into this mixture as well. And as for the sugar, I was using white sugar to keep it nice and light in color. So I went ahead and I mixed that mixture very well with the parched flour and the milk and the sugar. And at this point, I'm going to add it into my karahi that I've melted some ghee into. When you're adding it into the karahi, you have to make sure that the ghee is not too hot because if it's too hot and it fries as soon as you add it in, it's going to be very lumpy. And also, you have to make sure to use one of these tea strainers and strain out that mixture. The thing here is that if you do not strain it, all of those little lumps that you see at the bottom of the strainer, they would have been in your lapsi and it would have never cooked out of the lapsi. It would have stayed super lumpy. And now this is where the hard work begins. You have to sit here on the stove for maybe about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a little less, maybe a little longer, and you have to watch this on a medium heat and keep on stirring it so this way it can stay nice and smooth. If you have a whisk, I definitely recommend whisking it as well to keep any lumps away. And after a little while, you're going to be left with this beautiful, luscious mixture that I have here. At this point, I'm going to be going in with my raisins that I soaked, and I'm going to mix this in. This right here is my lapsi all done, and it is also ready to serve. And just like that, I finished making all of those beautiful sweets for my Diwali menu this year. I hope each and every one of you enjoys these recipes. If you want to see each one in depth, I have them linked in my description box down below this video, and you can just search them up for whatever you need for this Diwali season. I have it all on my channel. I hope this year for this Diwali, everyone, no matter how good or bad of a year you've had, I hope you can just go ahead and reflect, be hopeful for the future, create new memories, eat some of these delicious foods for this holiday season, and go ahead and be thankful for everything we do have. I want to thank you all for the love, for the support. I wish you all Mother Lakshmi's choicest blessings. Have a great Diwali. Please go ahead, like, share, subscribe, drop those comments down below, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye everyone.